Well, welcome to a short little talk that I want to do today on cell phones. I've been repeatedly asked to do something on cell phones, and part of me has always resisted it, but part of me feels there might be value in doing it. I think a lot of people today are seeing some of the research that's coming out about some of the physical problems that can come out of too much cell phone usage. Other parents are getting very frustrated that their kids are spending so much time on their cell phones. It's even causing some problems in intimate relationships that people are on their cell phones too much. And so it's becoming a potential problem for a lot of people. And then some people know they're spending too much time on their cell phone, but they can't stop. And it's like it's almost becoming an addiction to them, or once they get started, they can't stop it. Part of what I struggle with is we live in a culture right now where everything becomes polarized, black and white, all or nothing. And so what a lot of people have done when they see the research on cell phones, when they see their kids on cell phones too much, people getting addicted to it, they just go, cell phones are evil. I'm not going to let my kids use cell phones at all. Cell phones are evil. And they go to that extreme. They're not interested in thinking it through. Let's not interested in learning kind of have a healthy relationship with a cell phone. They just put it into this very polarized, cell phones are evil, bad, let's not allow them. It reminds me of a lot of things when I was growing up. And I remember hearing as a kid, sometimes money is bad, TV is bad, alcohol is bad, even some sex is bad. And so what they were basically doing is because some people misuse TV, some people misused alcohol, some people misuse money, some people misuse sex. Therefore, the money's the problem, the TV's the problem, sex is the problem. And I go, no, TVs are morally neutral. Sex, it's an activity. It doesn't have morals. It's how you use it. You can use it in a healthy way. You can use it in an unhealthy way. You can misuse it. Same with TVs, same with money. And so it's not the thing that's the issue. It's how people use it that's the issue. And how they use it reveals their issues. It reveals what's going on in their character. And so to say cell phones are the issue, to me, is falling into that same trap. And it's no, cell phones are pretty neutral. The internet, cell phones, they brought so many benefits to our world today. It's how people misuse them that's the issue. And the reason people misuse them is because of their issues. So what I want to look at is, yes, cell phones can be a problem for some people to a degree. But what I want you to realize and think about is that misuse of cell phones is actually a symptom of deeper problems. So we can focus on the symptoms of the deeper problems and try to patch up the symptoms and put band-aids on them. But if we don't deal with the root problems, all these band-aids aren't really going to work. Dr. Bruce Perry has written a book with Oprah Winfrey called What Happened to You? And it's a wonderful book that really helps reframe how we look at a lot of societal problems. So if you look at homelessness, drug addiction, people in prison, cell phone misusage, it's easy to go, oh, those are terrible problems in our society. Let's put band-aids on them. What's wrong with you? You shouldn't be doing that. And we judge them and we condemn them. What the research is showing is 97% of people with addiction have childhood trauma. Over 90% of people in prison, childhood trauma. Over 90% of people homeless, childhood trauma. And so the root issue is complex trauma. And it's showing itself in different symptoms, people trying to cope with that internal pain and emptiness that they couldn't resolve as a child, and they developed maladaptive ways of coping. They needed distractions. That's what the real issue is. And so what I want you to have as a framework is when you look at cell phones and you go, this person is misusing their cell phone. Don't go bad them. That's the problem. Let's put a Band-Aid on it. Let's make more rules for it. let's go, you know what? Part of a child who has internal pain, internal emptiness that they can't resolve, is they need constant distractions from that. They have no other solution to it. They need something that takes them out of the present, out of the pain, out of the emptiness, gives them a little bit of pleasure. That then becomes their go-to. That becomes their solution to this emotional problem they can't resolve. That internal pain, that internal emptiness is caused by complex trauma. When they are feeling too much stress, they're feeling overwhelmed with problems they can't resolve. They're sensing a lot of anger in the house, a lot of anxiety in the house. They're sensing that mom and dad aren't safe because of their stress, because of their anger, because of the tension, because of their anxiety. Their needs are not being met as children, so that's leading to an emptiness. They're not connecting with mom and dad, and that's leading to pain and emptiness. All of that is creating this cauldron of emotional pain that their brain is looking for a solution for. And it finds it in distractions, things that seem to medicate it, things that seem to take them out of it and give them some pleasure. That's how I want us to look at cell phones. Now, before I develop it a little bit further, let me just give you some of the stats about cell phones that are quite recent. So right now in the world, there are more cell phones than there are people. I find that very interesting. The most common feature used on a phone is not the calling feature. It's the camera. That's the most common used feature. The average person checks their phone 100 plus times a day. They figure between 100 and 150 times a day, people check their phone. Most people sleep with their phones, either beside them on the nightstand or under their pillow or beside them in bed. So 70 to 80% of smartphone users go to bed with their phone, basically. Then more than half of the web traffic now does not come from computers, it comes from phones. So over 55% of global web traffic comes from cell phones. Now this one you may not like, but the cell phone is 10 times dirtier than a toilet seat. It contains 10 times more bacteria than a toilet seat. They now have a new term that they call nomophobia. And it's basically no mobile phobia. It's a person who has a fear of losing their phone or being without their phone. We've become so dependent on our phone that as soon as we go out and we don't have it, we panic. Or we have to go somewhere and not have it, we panic. There's a fear of forgetting, losing, or not having your device. The final thing is that smartphone addiction is becoming very common. They now figure that about 66%, 2/3 of the global population suffers from some degree of smartphone addiction. So, is it a problem? Yes. Is the issue that cell phones are bad? No. It's a symptom of deeper issues. Now, let me just take this a little bit farther. Kids between the ages of 8 to 12 now are spending, on average, 4 to 6 hours a day on their phones. Teens between 13 and 18, 7 to 9 hours a day on the phone. They're the biggest cell phone users. Young adults, 19 to 29, 100% own cell phones, and they spend 5 to 6 hours a day on their phone. Adults spend 3 to 5 hours on their phone. Social media, gaming, videos, that takes up a large portion of the time that people spend on the phone. Now, there's a very interesting reality that's come out of the research. Though cell phones connect people, it's actually resulting in greater loneliness in our culture. I think this is so significant coming out of complex trauma. So social media causes people to feel more connected, but there's less personal interaction. There's few deep relationships. So you get like comments, you get direct messages, but there's not true emotional connection and bonding taking place. The other thing that happens often with people being on their phones all the time that leads to greater loneliness is it's a comparison culture. So everybody's presenting on their pages presentations of themselves that are looking really good. All of they're dressed up, they've got all of their toys, they've got all of their vacation spots, and it's causing people to feel like they're missing out on a good life. And that leads to a deeper loneliness. Another aspect is when you're online all the time, you get online validation. And people start relying on getting that for their self-worth. But again, there's not deep emotional support and connection. So the other piece is that for many people, they're now on their phones even for work. They're now on their phones even for entertainment. So you don't go out and do stuff with some people. You don't go out and go to work with people. You're on your own all the time. Now people prefer to text over talking on the phone. And so all of that leads to a greater and greater isolation from in-person connection. And what I think is significant is I have experienced in our lift classes through Zoom meetings, true, meaningful, deep connection with people. That's very satisfying. Now, most people don't get that just by being on their phones through the normal mediums that they use. And so they get superficial connection, but not deep connection. But what I have found, even with getting deep connection with people over Zoom, there's still a need for in-person connection. There's still something in us that needs physical connection, physical contact, up close, impersonal. And online does not provide that. Now, there's another piece to this that is very significant. And that is, as people spend more and more time online, for many people, they develop actually, they lose the skills to actually socially interact. So now they have a fear of going out in public and socially interacting because they forget how to. And so that drives them into greater isolation. Then in their isolation, as they're on social media, they spend more and more time doom scrolling and looking at all of the bad things happening in the world, and their mental health begins to decline. And then online, there's a whole bunch of cyberbullying that's happening, online harassment that takes place. And if you post anything, if you make a comment on anything, then you get people that attack you, put you down, and all of that affects your mental health, creates a greater sense of loneliness and isolation. And so this is becoming a huge issue. Then another piece to all of this that's developing is through AI. So people are relying more and more on AI and ChatGPT for interaction, but it's not the same as in person. And then the final piece to all of this is that many people are finding that they build online friendships with people across the world in different cities, and they're good, but they're fleeting. There's something about in-person stuff that tends to have a greater sense of commitment, a greater sense of feeling supported. So those need to be kept in mind as you think of your cell phone usage. You still need physical connection. Our brains are wired for in-person connection. You can replace connection to a degree online, but not totally. That is so significant. So let me come to helping us manage our own cell phone usage in a healthy way, to have a good relationship with it, to manage our children so that they develop good tools for cell phone usage as well. So if you're finding that you are misusing your cell phone, you're on it too much, it's concerning you, it's concerning your partner, become self-aware. Ask yourself, why is my brain always needing a distraction? What is going on deep down? What need is it trying to meet? What pain or emptiness is it trying to solve with this distraction? Be curious about it. Don't do this to beat yourself up. Do this to figure out what need is not being met in my life. What is happening in my life that is increasing my stress, my anxiety, that is causing me to have pain and emptiness. I need to figure out how to meet those needs, how to solve those problems. Otherwise, my brain's going to keep going back to seeing the cell phone as a solution to that emptiness. Now, partly why you have to become self-aware is a lot of this can function at a subconscious level. You're not consciously aware that there's a pain and emptiness going on until you stop and get present to yourself and become aware and think about it. Then you can bring that subconscious to the conscious world and become aware. So once you begin to figure that out, then you can begin to go, okay, I need to meet these needs. So for parents, don't just make rules for your children about cell phones. Don't just say, cell phone, you're using it too much. This is bad. We're going to stop this. We're going to put these rules. You can only use it for this amount of time. You can only do it for this purpose. You stop and ask, what is the underlying issue in my child? What needs are not being met that cause them to need a distraction? And usually what you're going to find, and some of you are going to find this painful, is they're not feeling that deep connection with you that they long for. They're not feeling that they can totally open up, be accepted, be themselves, be vulnerable without being judged, without you trying to change them or fix them. You're not as safe to them as you should be. And so they don't feel they're connecting. You're also maybe too busy. Also, you're not present when you're with them. You're distracted all the time. So you have to figure out, what are my issues that are actually causing my child to have issues? Because we can't solve the cell phone problem by just trying to fix the child. We got to change me. And that is so important. So cell phone usage, once you get the underlying issues figured out, you still then have to, in the here and now, realize this has become a bit of a problem. I now need some boundaries. So the reality to me is that often people focus on boundaries that are just about prevention. They have a negative focus. Let's not overuse. And so don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Those have their place. And then they go to accountability. Okay, now I need to be accountable that I stick to these boundaries that forbid me from doing these things. That has its place. But it's missing the most critical part of boundaries. I have to fix the underlying issues and develop healthy tools. I have to find connection. I have to find healthy self-care activities that give positive experiences and pleasure. I have to replace the cell phone usage with things that are actually better for me. Focus on that as well. One of the things that I remember growing up is, so my parents grew up and were part of a religious organization that saw TVs when I was young as bad. So people didn't have TVs in their home. They just saw that as evil. It was going to lead you astray. And so we never had a TV until I was 16. But what I realized was, whenever we went to a friend's house or whenever we went to my grandpa's house who had a TV, we didn't know how to control watching TV. We just would sit in front of the TV and watch it for hours and hours. Didn't matter what was on. We were enthralled by this TV. Nobody taught us how to set boundaries with the TV. What to me would have been so much better is to say, nothing wrong with the TV, but we're going to teach you and give you tools and help you set boundaries so you have a good relationship with the TV. So it's a positive in your life, not a negative. That's what you're doing with cell phones. You're helping your children begin to go, okay, we're going to let you be on your cell phone for half an hour. Then we're going to go do something else. Or we're going to just restrict your playing of this game to this amount, but we're going to do other things as well. So you're beginning to help them know how to set boundaries and enforce boundaries in their own life. So cell phones, they're kind of here to stay, I think. We can put them in the camp of, oh, they're terrible things, but I think that's not the wise way to go. It's really learning, if I'm misusing it, I got some issues that my brain thinks cell phones are going to solve. I need to sort that out. If my children are misusing it, it's probably they got some stuff going on that is related to me and my relationship with them. And I need to really look into and understand how my internal issues create internal issues in my child. I hope that helps. Thank you for being with me. Have a great day.